วิญญาณนิพพานายชโพธิยาเอเตนะสัจวะเจนะโสติเตโหตุสัพพิกาอิสิตุระมังอนุกัมปิมังสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอปารุธาเดสะนะมัตสะทวราเยสโรวันทาบะมุนตันตุตะไทยSo this is a very special day, and I appreciate all the attention, concern, and preparation for celebrating this birthday. There's a very long chant inviting all the devas, the brahmas, every possible good force, all the goodwill, everything in the universe to bless this occasion, to bless us all. Tomorrow is His Majesty King Vajiralongkorn's birthday in Thailand, and he's given titles to some of our monks, including myself, Ajahn Amaro, Ajahn Pasano, Ajahn Jasaro in Thailand, and due to my age and health, I couldn't quite make it back to Thailand in time without circumventing this auspicious event. But we send our blessings and to the King on his birthday tomorrow. So this is just to see how somebody like Luang Por in Thailand was the one from a remote part of Thailand, not in the central part, and who was a follower of the Buddha, practiced the Dhamma, was impeccable in the Sangha, and just how this one monk, Thai monk in a remote village in northeast Thailand had such an effect, just on the power of his practice and his dedication to the Dhamma. So I met Luang Por in 1967. I'd been ordained as a Samanera a year before that in Nong Khai, and then I was introduced to Luang Por when I took bhikkhu ordination, and therefore his teaching, his emphasis on the practice of meditation was very compelling. You could see just in his own behavior and his presence a really wise human being. So it inspired me to bear with the difficulties of being a newly ordained monk, living in a society I didn't understand very well, having to learn a language, another language, and live in a tropical climate and adjust to the diet and things that existed then. But Luang Por emphasis was always, in the very basic teaching, was to be aware of what you're thinking, to observe, be the witness to the states of mind. So even then, before I could actually understand his formal sermons, Dhamma talks, his desanas, before I could actually feel comfortable in listening to him speak, his basic teaching was to develop this sati sampajanya, mindfulness, intuitive awareness, be aware of what arises, ceases. And so this is a real practical, really practical advice, because we all have to deal with physical conditions we experience through our bodies, with our emotional habits, with our memories of the past, our fears, worries, problems about the future. This is about being a human being and identifying completely with the mortal conditions that we're experiencing here and now. For example, we all have human bodies at each an individual form sitting here in this cella. And so we identify strongly with our separateness, with our differences. And of course this is cultural conditioning, it's the ego operating, the sense of a separate self as we create ourselves as a personality, as a separate person from the rest. And through these kind of delusions of the ego, the cultural conditioning, social conditioning that we've all acquired, we are attached, we bind ourselves to the reality of suffering, or dukkha in Pali word for suffering. So even in the midst of affluence and political stability and the best that the worldly dhammas can offer, we still have this problem of suffering, which the Buddha addressed in his first sermon. After his enlightenment, one of his thoughts came to him: how can you teach? How can you express Dhamma? And this word Dhamma is a Pali Sanskrit word that you can't define. The best you can call it is, in English, is ultimate reality, or just plain reality. Ultimate reality makes it sound very high up, where reality is what we're experiencing right now, where this is the reality of this moment is like this. How can you teach or use language to teach others to reflect on their state of mind, on their bodies as they exist in the present moment? Usually our lives are based on doing something now to get some reward in the future. So we live in the present moment to either to be going someplace, to be doing something, to be, even if we're meditating, we're meditating to get some good result in the future. We also have to deal with the past, the memories that we have of what we've said and done in the past. Some were pleasant, some unpleasant. We feel guilty, remorse, or things we've said or done that we regret. That arises in the present. The future is full of potential ones, aging, getting old, reaching 85, having physical disabilities and so forth. Old age, sickness, death is what awaits us all in the future. But here and now is where Dhamma is here and now. It's not something high up and remote or abstract. And so the Buddha emphasized the importance of awareness, mindfulness. And this word, of course, now is being used a lot in the internet and YouTube and various modern high-tech sources. The interest in mindfulness has noticeably increased over the past 20 years. And this is a good sign, because even though so much emphasis is based on how to improve yourself, how to become a better person or a more charming personality, or how to stay young, or how to make money, the whole emphasis of Buddhist teaching was on mindfulness, which is here and now. It's not, you don't become mindful in the future. you're mindful here and now. And so the first noble truth that the Buddha taught, this was the genius of the Lord Buddha, was to take this common human experience that we all can recognize, ordinary suffering, worry, anxiety, whatever it might be, guilt, remorse about the past, whatever form it takes, physically, mentally, emotionally, we can be aware of it. And the Buddha put this in a category that's quite interesting, because he called it a noble truth. A noble truth, not ultimate truth. So it's not a kind of metaphysical statement, it's a noble truth. And what's noble about it is when we start observing it in ourselves, not just blaming others for our suffering or trying to get rid of it, but understanding it. So the Buddha's practice is based on this understanding of our fears, of our anxieties, worries, our guilt, remorse, resentment, anger, greed, jealousy, all these emotions that I strongly identify with, we're aware of. And so this is a difference, being aware of what you're feeling rather than just reacting to what you're feeling. Usually with suffering, we react to it. We don't want it. Nobody wants to suffer, want to get rid of it. If we can't get rid of it, then we blame the weather or other people or the society. But it's not about seeking a cause for suffering outside, like due to something of the past, but recognizing suffering is like this sense of a separateness, of being a separate personality, of being the age you are, of being the gender you are, of being what you look like, your appearance. We're so attached to our appearance. The modern life in countries like Canada fraught with this kind of suffering of wanting to look good, not wanting to get old, not wanting to have disabilities or diseases. So suffering as here and now is a noble truth rather than something that is destroying our lives or seeing it in highly personal ways as my suffering. It's not personal, it is what it is, it's a condition that arises and ceases in us all. And the Buddha is the one that points to this reality. It's not ultimate reality, it's what we can easily recognize here and now in our own conscious experience. And to see that the causes of this suffering are ignorance of Dhamma, not being mindful, not understanding the Four Noble Truths, not having investigated your own life, understood what you really are, you tend to create this suffering through desires for sensory pleasures, through desires for becoming, being something better, getting something you don't have in the present, and the desire to get rid of things you have now that you don't want. So the second noble truth is through understanding desire, we let go of it. The Buddha advised to say, let go, observe the suffering you create through this habitual, ignorant attachment to suffering, to the sense of a separate self, to the body, to the emotions that you experience, to the memories that you have. The Buddha made it very easy for us because he taught ultimately it's a very simple teaching. Buddhism is often manifests in modern life seem very complicated. When you look at the Tripitaka, the scriptures, the Buddhist scriptures, the Abhidhamma, it looks so vast and so complicated that some people feel that, it's just an intellectual exercise, or it's just a matter of belief and faith in what the scriptures say. So someone like Luang simplified everything down to this reflection on the Four Noble Truths, which is the first sermon of the Buddha after his enlightenment. To be investigated, to be realized individually. So my experience living with him, but I lived either with him at Wat Pah Pong, the name of his monastery in Ubon, or he would send me off to branch monasteries. But during the 10 years that I lived in Thailand with Luang Por, I learned, I had these insights into these noble truths through just observing, being aware of suffering and its causes, the desires, the three kinds of desires that we attach to, that we identify with, that bind us to the fear of death, to all the human forms of anguish and despair and suffering that we tend to experience. By understanding, by investigating and letting go of these desires, then you have what is known as insight. In 1977, I was invited to the UK, to England, to London, and with the Luang Por and I went to London in 1977, in May of 1977, and he investigated the possibilities of setting up some kind of branch monastery in the UK. There seemed to be enough interest and enough support available in the UK at that time. And so I went. Ajahn Dhamma also came with us later. So he's one of the original monks that helped establish the monastic sangha in England. And so we've been together for many years, since Wat Pah Pong and in the UK, and now he's established a branch monastery here in Canada. And so this is not just some kind of cult, religious cult, just trying to survive and convert people in Canada to Buddhism. This is not our purpose. It's not about converting people or making people change their religions, but offering occasion for meditation, for understanding of Dhamma, for the state of our humanity, for beginning to take an interest in what is a human being, what is its limitation, are you really just a human being, are you really just a physical body, are you really just a man or a woman, are you really just this limited form that is sitting here in the sala, or is there more to it than that? And mindfulness then is what we mindfulness is what we call the gate or the door to the deathless. So when I chanted in the beginning, Namo Tassa Bhagavato 3 times, and I chanted this, Aparuta Desangamatassa Kawara Yesodavanta Bamuntantu Satang. This is in the Pali language. It's a statement the Buddha made after his enlightenment. The gates to the deathless are open. You can trust in this. For those that can hear this or understand this, those who have this faith and this interest in mindfulness, trust it. Trust in awareness, trust in mindfulness. And so most of our teaching is about learning to encourage people to trust awareness. Because when you think about yourself as a person, as a personality, as a physical body, as a man or a woman, as a Canadian or a Thai or whatever nationality, that always binds you to some form of suffering. Those are limited identities, those are acquired identities. That's not what one really is a limited physical mortal form that we tend to believe is all that we are. So what is the ultimate reality then? The reality of this moment is that everyone here is experiencing consciousness. Consciousness is unitive, it's not personal. So the deathless is really, and Dhamma, ultimate reality, the reality of this moment is consciousness, which everyone is experiencing here and now. And is learning to trust this awareness, and what arises and ceases in consciousness is your body arises and ceases, you're born, you grow up, you get old, and the body dies. That's all in consciousness. Your thoughts, your emotions, your memories, all the egotism, vanity, self-views, self-criticisms, human emotions, love, hate, and like and dislike are all conditions arising and ceasing. What we see, what we hear, smell, taste, touch, think, feel, are conditions, and are phenomena. They're things that arise and cease, are born and die. But what doesn't arise and cease at this moment, here and now, what isn't born and what doesn't die, is consciousness, and that's the same thing as mindfulness. So when we say mindfulness is the door or the gate, that's the way that a human individual can recognize the mortal state as an illusion, as a state that comes and goes and changes according to other conditions. But what remains constant, trustworthy, stable, and we call deathless, amatta Dhamma, the deathless reality of here and now, is consciousness or awareness. This is what I'm saying is not to be grasped or believed in, or to disbelieve, but to understand. So observe, what I'm saying, the way I'm talking, what I have said so far, how it affects you. How my words, my statements, my talk this afternoon affects you right now. You be aware of that is the way it is, whether you understand, whether you agree, disagree, don't know. Each one of you is aware of what you're feeling or what you're experiencing at this moment. And that awareness is not the feeling. The feeling changes. Your mood, whether it's you have faith or you have doubts or belief or disbelief, that changes, that arises and ceases. But what doesn't arise and cease is this conscious awareness, presence here and now. So today I'm completely 85 years old. And in terms of human perception, that's very old. So even I, my conditioned personality, think 85 is old. But consciousness is not old. You know, so, everybody says, people try to be kind and not say you're old, because that's politically incorrect. To point to the fact that your body's 85 years old, you're an old man, is impolite according to our society. But in terms of Dhamma, that's the way it is. Bodies, that's what they do. They just get older and older, as you're all very much aware of. They don't get younger. So in England, I remember having birthday celebrations and people say, "You're only 80 years young," or something like that. Well, that's not what I like to hear. I quite like getting old, because when you meditate, when you practice the Dhamma, then the aging process, as it's, you see the pointlessness of attachment, of the passions you had when you're young, of the views, the opinions that you held on to when you're younger. You see the pointlessness and the ridiculousness of holding on to them as you grow older. Because they don't create peace. They don't lead towards peacefulness and calm, but towards worry, anxiety, regret, remorse, and unpleasant emotions that are the result of inappropriate actions of the past, memories of the past, or worries about the future. One of the big fears that human beings have is the fear of death. People don't, at this time, we don't know what it's like to die. We're all alive. And death is what we haven't experienced yet. It's in the future. We all know that we're going to die, but we don't like to be reminded of it. People have this kind of hoping to live a long lifetime, or eventually they'll conquer death. That modern science will conquer death and will not have to die ever. And just think the problems that would create if none of us died. And talk about pollution and climate change. And this is, death is the natural end of a condition, whether it's a mental condition, an emotion, a memory. All conditions, all phenomena are impermanent. That means they are born, they arise, and they cease. Being born and die, arising and ceasing are the same thing. So Luang Por Chah would always emphasize, he'd always say, "Die con die before you die." And so this was like through mindfulness, through investigation, you see the ego arising, the emotional habits that you've acquired in your life come and go, and you let them go. You let them die. They cease. And what remains when you let everything go? When you let everything go, you're no longer attached to conditions, to phenomena, is peace. So peace is the natural quality of consciousness. And somebody the other day was asking about peace and tranquility, because we want peace of mind. We want to feel safe and stable. So we kind of hypnotize ourselves by trying to tranquilize, by forcing the mind to be quiet towards a peaceful object externally. But that kind of peace or tranquility is impermanent, because it's still conditioned, it's still phenomena. It's a phenomenon where consciousness, pure consciousness that without attachment to conditions, is naturally peaceful. It's not created peacefulness. It's not dependent on conditions. And so this is why and we encourage you to recognize it, the potential that we all have. Those of you who have an interest in the teachings of the Buddha, those who have an interest in mindfulness or in meditation, this is to be encouraged, because this is a direction that will create the conditions for insight to arise, so you can understand in a direct way yourself. So I want to thank the Sangha, Ajahn Dhammo, and all the Sangha present here, and all the lay people that have made this occasion so pleasant, so inspiring for all of us. My blessings and best wishes to you all.
Andamayang avadatata satukarang tatamase. Sadhu, 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 anumodami.